we'll be in Genesis 42 tonight. Genesis 42. I'm going to read through our text. Remember in chapter 41, Joseph interpreted the dreams there of Pharaoh. He had interpreted the chapter before that. He interpreted the dream of the baker and the butler. The baker lost his life. The butler was put back into position there underneath the Pharaoh of Egypt. And he forgot about Joseph until Pharaoh had a dream and couldn't interpret the dream and needed some. And the butler was like, oh, yeah, I remember. There's a guy that told me my dream when I was in prison a while back ago. And they brought Joseph before the Pharaoh. And Joseph interpreted the dream of Pharaoh. Of course, that dream, there's two dreams. They both had the same meaning. And the meaning of the dreams was there's going to be 7 years of great plenty in the land, followed by 7 years of famine, of dearth, of want in the land. After that, that was severe. And so Joseph gave him some advice there that he ought to set someone out over the affairs of the kingdom to administer, especially the years of plenty, to store it up. And he gave him just some thoughts about how he could save and put some storage away for those lean years, and then they would have enough when those lean years came. And the Pharaoh was so impressed that he took Joseph and he set him up. And he says, all right, then you're the man. All right, what a great plan that is. And he elevated Joseph to just underneath his command, his right hand, there in the land, and he was able to govern that portion of his kingdom with that. We saw in the passage that he was given a wife there of a lady from Egypt there, the daughter of a priest there, and the Lord blessed him with a couple children that he named with Manasseh and Ephraim with that. And so as we concluded the chapter 41, we see that the 7 years of plenty came and went, and then the 7 years of famine came. And verse 57 of chapter 41, and all countries came into Egypt to Joseph for to buy corn, because that the famine was so sore in all the land. So the famine wasn't just for Egypt, it was in the whole area. And so these countries heard and knew that Egypt had stored it up, and they were going to come. The background is that they were going to come to Joseph for their needs. All right, so here we are in chapter 42. Now when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons, why do ye look one upon another? Why are you just standing there looking at each other? And he said, behold, I've heard that there's corn in Egypt. Get you down thither and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die. Boys, make yourself useful. Go get some food, right? There's the food. Verse 3, Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt. But Benjamin, Joseph's brother, Jacob, sent not with his brethren, for he said, lest peradventure mischief befall him. And the sons of Israel came to buy corn among those that came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. And Joseph was the governor over the land, and he it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. Light bulb. And Joseph saw his brethren, he knew them, but made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them, and he said unto them, whence come ye? And they said, from the land of Canaan to buy food. And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew not him. And Joseph remembered the dreams which he dreamed of them, and said unto them, ye are spies, to see the nakedness of the land ye are come. And so Joseph instantly, God brought back those dreams that he had dreamed when he was just a teenager there, that he had shared, that his brothers and his parents really admonished him for those dreams along those lines. And so God is connecting the dots in Joseph's mind. He's connecting the dots, saying, hey, look, I was giving you revelation back when you were a teenager of what would come to pass. And here it is. I'm fulfilling what I had promised to you. All right? So, again, he plays a little coy along these lines, and he accuses them. He says, "You are spies to see the nakedness of the land ye are come." And they said unto him, "Nay, my lord, but to buy food are thy servants come. We are all men's sons. We are true men." Wait a minute. They haven't had a very good history, have they? They've lied. They lied to Jacob about what happened to Joseph and what they did to them, right? They're not very truthful men along those lines, but they're claiming to be. Thy servants are no spies. So Joseph is trying them. He's trying to see where they are with their character, right, along those lines. And he said unto them, "Nay." So he pushes back, Joseph says, "But to see the nakedness of the land ye are come." And they said, "Thy servants are 12 brethren, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is not." Well, they had no idea what happened to him except that they sold him into slavery. The story to their father was that he was not, that he was taken by an animal, right, and slain along those lines, broke their daddy's heart with that. Verse 14, Joseph pushed back again a third time. Joseph said unto them, that is it that I spake unto you, saying, Ye are spies. Hereby ye shall be proved. By the life of Pharaoh ye shall not go forth hence, except your youngest brother come hither. Send one of you, and let him fetch your brother, and ye shall be kept in prison, that your words may be proved, whether there be any truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh surely ye are spies. So he's kind of pushing them. He's putting pressure upon them, right, along those lines. So he put them all together in a ward 3 days. And Joseph said unto them the third day, This do and live, for I fear God. If ye be true men, let one of your brethren be bound in the house of your prison. Go ye carry corn for the famine of your houses, but bring your youngest brother unto me, so shall your words be verified, and ye shall not die. And they did so. Now watch verse 21. And they said one to another, We are verily guilty concerning our brother. Wow. These many years later, their conscience still haunted them about they felt guilt. They were starting to feel guilt. Perhaps they had not felt guilt up until this point, but now the pressure cooker's been turned up a little bit in their lives, right? And they're starting to remember back in their lives, hey, we did something that we shouldn't have done. We were verily guilty. In that we get a little bit extra here. We weren't told this earlier. We saw the anguish of his soul when he besought us, and we would not hear. So evidently, when they put Joseph in that pit, he called out and cried out to them for mercy, and cried out to them that he would spare them with that. But they turned a deaf ear to that along those lines. We would not hear. Therefore is this distress come upon us. God is judging us, right? That's their thought. God is judging us for our sin along those lines. Now watch this. God's going to turn it up another notch in their life. They've got a lot of pressure on them. All right, verse 22, And Reuben answered them, saying, Spake I not unto you, saying, Do not sin against the child, and ye would not hear? Reuben said, look, I didn't want to send him away. I told you to let him go, and let's quit messing with him, and let's not do this. The oldest. Therefore, behold, also his blood is required. So they're looking at this again as God's retribution upon their sin. And they knew not that Joseph understood them, for he spake unto them by an interpreter. So Joseph didn't speak to them directly. He spake to them through He spoke the Egyptian language there to an interpreter. The interpreter interpreted into Hebrew, though he knew Hebrew. He knew their language there. Verse 24. Look at Joseph's tenderness. He turned himself about from them and wept. I believe, as another has counted through this, that this was the first of 5 times that Joseph wept over the situation with his brothers here. He had a very tender heart. And he returned to them again and communed with them, and he took from them Simeon and bound him before their eyes. Then Joseph commanded to fill their sacks with corn and to restore every man's money into his sack and to give them provision for the way, and thus did he unto them. And he believed that he put the monies in their sack, and then he gave them extra food so they didn't have to dig in the sack, so they could get a ways away before they found out that the money was there, along those lines. Again, he's testing them to see how truthful they're going to be, right? So along those lines. They call themselves true men. And Joseph knew better than that in their history, their character, but he wanted to see, has God been working on their heart? Verse 26. So they laded their asses with corn and departed thence. And as one of them opened his sack to give his ass provender in the inn, he espied his money, for behold, it was in his sack's mouth. So he went to feed his animal, and he found the money. And he said unto his brethren, my money is restored, and lo, it is even in my sack. Now watch this. And their heart failed them, and they were afraid, saying one to another, what is this that God hath done unto us? So they're recognizing that all of this is coming from the hand of God along those lines. Verse 29. They came unto Jacob their father unto the land of Canaan, and told him all that befell unto them, saying, the man who is the Lord of the land spake roughly to us, and took us for spies of the country. And we said unto him, we are true men, we are no spies. We be 12 brethren, sons of our father. One is not, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan. And the man, the Lord of the country, said unto us, hereby shall I know that ye are true men. Leave one of your brethren here with me, and take food for the famine of your households, and be gone. And bring your youngest brother unto me, then shall I know that ye are no spies, but that ye are true men. So will I deliver you your brother, and ye shall traffic in the land. And it came to pass, as they emptied their sacks, so they had only, up to this point, realized that only one of them had their money back, but now the rest of them opened their sacks, that behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when both they and their father saw the bundles of money, look here again, they were what? Afraid. And Jacob their father said unto them, me have ye bereaved of my children. Joseph is not. So he almost, he's laying the blame for Joseph on the brothers, really not even knowing how truthful that was all the way. And Simeon is not. And ye will take Benjamin away. All these things are against me. And Reuben spake unto his father, saying, slay my 2 sons, if I bring him not to thee. Deliver him into my hand, Benjamin that is, and I will bring him to thee again. He says, hey, look, I'll take care of Benjamin. Let's go back. I need to take him back so we can retrieve Simeon. You can, I will leave, my 2 sons, your grandchildren, can be in your hands. And along those lines, you can trust me. Verse 38. And he said, this is Jacob, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. If mischief befall him by the way in which ye go, then shall ye bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. I pointed out to you on a couple occasions. Verse 18, Joseph said, for I fear God. Then on 2 occasions here, it said that the brothers were afraid at the hand of God. So tonight we want to look at, it's not going to be an expositional message, but I want to talk to you. I want to instruct us. I want to remind us of whom do you and I fear? Do we fear God? The brothers lived their lives without a fear of God in their life, and it allowed them just to go off and do all kinds of things. But Joseph said, I fear God. Whom do you fear tonight? Paul's going to come back. We're going to sing one more song, and then I want to look at that thought. Whom do you fear? So we look at this idea of fear from our scripture. We see that Joseph feared God, and honestly, that really affected the way he lived, did it not? When it came to Potiphar's wife wanting to tempt him and wanting him to have illicit relationships behind her husband's back, Joseph said no. And he said, not only that, how can I sin against God? Joseph had a healthy fear of God. He knew that God watched him. He had a reverence for him, a respect for him. Fear is defined in Webster's dictionary in two ways. Number one, to have a reverential awe of something. It's like you stand in awe of something. Number two, to be afraid or apprehensive. We see that contrasting Joseph, his brothers did not seem to have a fear of God. They seemed to do whatever it is that they wanted to do, not thinking about what God thought about it, not thinking about the consequences, not thinking about the fact that God was watching it, and they had no filter of a fear of God before them. So we think about fear. Fear is seated in the emotions. Oftentimes we think of fear as an emotion, and it often results in action. I'm going to get a little scientific, not much, just a little. Okay. The brain receives a stimulus, all right? For me, it might be like climbing up, I can remember heights, climbing up the stairs in a lighthouse and poking my head out right around the tippy top, around the edge of that, and getting a little woozy so my brain receives a stimulus. It's like, it does not like heights. I'm afraid of, what would it say? It's not, you shouldn't be afraid of falling. It's the impact, right? Something along those lines with that. But that the brain receives that little stimulus, which in turn releases chemicals. It causes the heart rate to intensify, right? Allowing muscles to receive energy needed to respond to the circumstance. The stimulus that it receives, it could be as something as a spider. How many of you are afraid of spiders? All right, yeah. Brother Don, all right. You have to send Miss Kathy after them, all right, with that. It could be a spider. It could be, the stimulus could be, all right, you get taken and grabbed, and there's a knife at your throat. And that stimulus in your mind, right, begins to pump that those hormones and those chemicals into your body so that we can respond. It could be an auditorium full of people waiting for you to speak. You've seen that, right? People, it's like, they're so, they're afraid to speak in front of people. I was there. And some of my children in speech class and such are there, and I'm proud of them. I'm proud of the overcoming some of those things. I wrote down this little scenario. It's dark out, and you're home alone. The house is quiet, other than the sound of the show that you're watching on the television. You see and hear it at the same time. The front door is suddenly thrown against the door frame. Your breathing speeds up. Your heart begins to race. Your muscles tighten. A split second later, it's just the wind. No one's trying to get into your home. But for that split second, you were afraid that you reacted as if your life were in danger. Your body initiating the fight or flight response that's critical to survival at times. But really, there was no danger at all. What happened to cause that reaction? So what is that fear? You know, the right type of fear is healthy to our survival and making good decisions. It's healthy. It helps us. It's a restraining force in our life, right? When you see a snake and you begin to be afraid of it a little bit, right? Along those lines. That's a good thing, right? We don't want our little 2-year-old, that have no knowledge of the fact that snakes, in some cases, could be very deadly and poisonous. You don't want the little toddler, let's, coming up to it and just playing. We don't want that, And so fear, developing a fear, a healthy fear of something, in many cases, it's a restraining force in our lives. The fear of the Lord is a foundational issue for each of us as Christians. The fear of the Lord is foundational. I probably don't preach on it and teach on it enough, because it's through the Bible, and the Bible gives some great insight on it, and it's something that you and I need in our lives. For many years, Jacob and his sons were able to live their lives seemingly without a thought of God. We're just going to do whatever it is that we're going to do. We've noticed that, right? Simeon and Levi, all right? You took our sister, Dinah, and you raped her. And so we're going to have vengeance on you, and we're going to concoct this plan to just wipe you off the map, right? The sons of Shechem. And so seemingly, Jacob's family did not have the fear of God in their lives. With Joseph, it seemingly, Reuben, all right, he had a little bit, obviously our text told us a little bit more insight. Hey, don't do this. Let's not sell. Don't worry. Reuben, shut up. Get out of here. We don't want to listen to you. We're 10 and you're 1. So our 10 trumps your 1. Go back to your little hole over there, right? And so seemingly they didn't have the fear of God with them. And it's the lack of this fear of God, even amongst Christians, of why our families and our marriages rapidly, we're losing them and deteriorate. It's why Christianity is not being effectively passed from one generation to another. It's why Christians suffer from foolish life choices. It's why children in Christian homes are experiencing the same degree of heartache and brokenness as those who don't know Christ. And it's why we don't live in a Christian nation any longer, is because we've lost the fear of God, the restraint in our life to keep us from going down the paths of sin in our lives. God commands us to fear Him, Ecclesiastes 12:13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. What's the conclusion? 2 words. Fear God and keep His commandments. If you fear God, you're going to do what you can to keep His commandments. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Well, wow, man, that's a lot of duty. He's got a lot of things. Well, really, the commandments boil down to 2, right? With that, the New Testament, Jesus said they will love the Lord thy God with all the heart and the soul, their might and the mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And these 2 rest all, or hang all the law and the prophets, all the commandments hang on those 2. And so that's the duty, is to fear God. Fear cannot be viewed as solely as an emotional response, though oftentimes the emotional and physical follow. Fear is first and foremost, I want us to grab a hold of this, a matter of the will. Fear is a matter of the will. What or whom do you and I choose to fear? I don't know. I was kind of, as a youth pastor, I can remember we had one teenager with us. It happened to be the pastor's daughter. And we were at an amusement park. We were part of a youth rally where there was good preaching. And then one of the activities of that youth rally, or the youth retreat week, was to go to Six Flags. And I remember it's like, all right, who's going to go on the acrophobia ride with me. Now, I don't know why. I mean, I don't like heights, but for some reason, if I feel somewhat secure, I can handle them. So this was a ride that has a little pole that goes straight up in the air. You've probably seen it. And around that pole, in a circular around that, are seats all around the pole. And you sit down in the seat, legs dangle in the free air, and the bar comes down on you and crunches you in there. And so then they raise the ring of seats up all the way to the top. And then they start counting down, 10, 9, and then they, almost always, they skip a few numbers. And real quickly, 2, 1, and then, whew, I counted it. It was like 4 seconds later, you're at the ground. It was just like, all right. So I remember this one pastor's daughter was with us, and she was deathly afraid of this thing, didn't want to go on. I'm like, oh, come on. Look, watch these people. They're coming down. They're laughing. They're having a great time. Count the seconds. It's over in 4 seconds. Flat. That's it. And so, I was trying to, sure enough, I made the mistake. She got on the ride. I can't remember how long. She cried for my wife wasn't happy with me. Don't you do that to the teenagers again. But it was in the mind, right? Some of that is in the mind. We're afraid. We're afraid of what might happen. We're afraid, and we can overcome some of those fears because it is a choice of what we fear and what we don't fear. I want us to look at just 3 aspects of this fear tonight that we find here or not find here in the Scripture. Number 1, consider with me the lacking of fear. The lacking of fear. Again, we see an example in this passage that it wasn't until they had some pressure applied to their lives, right? The brothers here, now they're like, we're afraid. God is bringing retribution upon our lives, upon our sin, they begin to feel guilty and conviction over what they had done in the past. But up until this point, it didn't seem like they cared a whole lot. They just let life go on, and it didn't matter that they got things right with God, right? They just went forward with that. And there's a lacking in many people's lives of fear. Part of that lacking is a disregard. The fool have said in his heart, there is no God. Psalm 14:1, and it's repeated again in Psalms. Romans 3, as it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one. There is none that understandeth. There is none that seeketh after God. They are all gone out of the way. They are altogether become unprofitable. There is none that doeth good, no, not one. Their throat is an open sepulchre, that's a grave. With their tongues they have used deceit. The poison of asp is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their ways, and the way of peace have they not known. And then Romans 3:18, there is no fear of God before their eyes. Perhaps why more folks don't receive Jesus Christ as their Savior is they don't fear Him. They don't fear the God of the universe who will judge, who is holy, who will judge sin and judge our sin. They don't want to think about that. They want to disregard that. They want to place that. They've chosen not to believe that or think about that. God turns the pressure up on people's lives. So you can study through the book of Exodus in the beginning there as God brought these plagues upon the children of Israel. How many plagues? 10, all right, 10 plagues. When he got to the 7th plague, a plague of hail from heaven, in verse number 30 of Exodus chapter number 9, God reminds them of these words. He says, ye will not yet fear the Lord. It doesn't matter what the plagues the flies and the frogs and all of these things that I've brought upon you, you still will not fear the Lord. There was no recognition of an authoritative presence. There was no submission to that authority. They wanted the feeling of being in control. I'm in control. I don't need to submit to an authority. I don't need to fear that authority. Well, that's why we as parents, we as authority, we need to set down the course, and there needs to be a healthy fear of those that we're underneath us, that, hey, when we step out of line, when we do something wrong, that they're not there to hurt me, but that's going to bring pain into my life. They need to have that healthy respect along those lines. How many times in this world has an authority said they're going to do something? You step over that line, and I'm going to do, and this is the consequence. And they step over that line, and that consequence doesn't happen. What does that do to that person underneath that authority? It emboldens them, right? It takes away the fear. We've seen this on the political theater, right? On the national level right here with different of our leaders that have said certain things, and then they've backed up and not followed through with what they've said. Right or wrong, we don't need to argue, but the fact of the matter is, if the authority says that, if you're going to say that, you've got to back that up, or else you begin to lose the healthy respect and fear, right, of that. And so sometimes here, there's a lacking of fear because we just disregard it. Sometimes fear is distorted. Sometimes people look at God as an angry God in heaven. He's just ready to avenge himself on us. Kind of like, you remember the commercial there? I haven't seen it in a long time, but the Golden Corral commercial there with the frying pan. And the guy takes the frying pan. I think he hits the person on the head, doing, with the big cast iron skillet frying pan. Well, sometimes we view God as like, all right, God's up in heaven with this big iron skillet, right? This heavy thing. And the minute that we step a little bit out of line, that God's going to whack and just going to and he's just angry there up at us. Well, the fact is that God does discipline, and God does set lines and standards, especially for his own children. The judgment of the wicked is coming one day along those lines. But God isn't angry at his children. God loves his children. And to love a child doesn't mean that you can't correct a child and continue to have a healthy fear of that authority. And so sometimes there's a distortion of that fear of that person's angry at me, or fearing the wrong things, such as fearing man or fearing a circumstance rather than fearing God. Sometimes we're more afraid of what our peers or our family are going to say about us with that than what God thinks of us and what God's approval is upon us. And so sometimes that fear is distorted on the wrong thing, right? The devil does that when you've experienced that, just as I've experienced that when we're out witnessing or trying to, all right, what is that person going to think of me if I give them a tract? Are they going to curse me? Are they going to, scoff at me? And they're my friend, and I don't want to hurt their feelings along those lines. And so sometimes we're more afraid of man or circumstances than we're afraid of God. And so that fear has become distorted, and we lack the true sense of the fear of God with that. So we see, first of all, a lacking. We see in our passage that these brothers had a lacking of the fear of God. The second thing that I wanted us to the principle with this fear that I want us to concentrate on tonight was a learning. So these all start with L's. A learning. Do you know fear is something that is to be learned? We talked about that, right? A child, when they're born and they don't have all of the knowledge and all the experience about something, right? The child has no idea about the oven until one of two things, until we educate them or until they God forbid, touch it when it's on and hot. But when they do, they begin to cry. And it begins to help them to do what? Learn to have a healthy respect for that oven along those lines. And so fear is something that can and ought to be learned from the Lord. We need to be taught the fear of the Lord. Listen to Psalm 34:11. Come, ye children, hearken or listen unto me. I will teach you the fear of the Lord. You and I, we can learn the fear of the Lord by this book right here and by watching those that walk with the Lord. And those that come after us can learn the fear of the Lord, ought to be learning the fear of the Lord by this book right here and by watching our lives and learning how to fear the Lord with that. And we learn this fear through a couple different ways. Number one, circumstances. Circumstances, a humbling, facing uncertainty, something that's out of our control. Didn't those brothers come to that situation right there? They didn't seemingly have much, if any, of the fear of the Lord in their life, the fear of God in their life, until now the circumstance hit them. And now they need food, and they're there in Egypt, and suddenly they're not going home. They're in prison for 3 days. And then suddenly, all right, we'll tweak it a little bit. We'll let most all of you go home, but choose one to stay. And then you got to bring back Benjamin. Uh-oh. We know Daddy's not going to let that happen. And they begin to have a circumstance that was out of their control. There's no way they're going to bust Simeon out of jail. There's no way they're going home. All 11 or all 10 of them are going home to Father at this point in time. It was a situation beyond their control. And then they get a ways away and they open their sack and they find money. That we didn't do that. They could hear in their mind, look, they're going to accuse us of stealing. They're going to accuse us of manipulating. They're going to accuse us, and we're going to go right back there, and none of us going to get to go home. God's judging us. There's a circumstance that's out of our control. And so sometimes we can learn the fear of the Lord by the circumstances around us. You know, God sometimes uses those circumstances to humble us. I might pronounce this wrong. Has anyone ever heard of a Berkuchi? Probably pronounce it wrong. The Berkuchi is an Asian man, I'm told, who trains eagles for hunting. They capture, tame, train, and keep eagles along those lines. The eagles have a lifespan of about 40 years. And these eagles they want to train are caught when they're very young. They're either taken from the nest. Well, boy, wouldn't the environmentalist and have a heyday with that today. But they're taken from the nest or they're trapped in a net. Once captured, the eagle is hooded and placed in a cage with a perch that sways constantly so it cannot rest or sleep. It's like, oh, it's cruel. For 2 or 3 days, it's deprived of food. So what are they doing? They're weakening it. They're disorienting it. They're putting it in a situation that it can't control along those lines. But during this time, the Berkuchi talks, sings, and chants to the eagle for hours on end. Finally, he begins to feed it, and as it allows it to stroke it, and slowly the weakened creature comes to rely on its master. When the Berkuchi decides that the relationship has become strong enough, the training begins. It says not all eagles can be trained, but those who take to life with a master display intense loyalty. here's the application. While the training and breaking of the eagle may seem harsh, it's a picture of how over time God breaks our independent spirit to draw us close to Him. So sometimes the circumstances around us that are out of our control, that break our heart, teach us that we need to fear and reverence God. There are three attributes of God that God wants us to know that help us in this fear. Number one, that God is just. In other words, God always does what's right. He makes the just decision. God is holy. God is without sin. He is holy. He's pure. And God is mighty. If we can keep those three things, that God is just, that God is holy, and God is mighty, it will help us to remember the fact of who God is. And it begins to help us be taught the fear of the Lord along those lines. Do you remember there in the book of Exodus when the children of Israel left Egypt, that they were at the bottom of the Mount Sinai? Here's the history recollection of it. And all the people saw the thunderings and the lightnings and the noise of the trumpet and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they removed and stood afar off. And they said unto Moses, You, Moses, speak thou with us, and we will hear, but let not God speak with us, lest we die. And Moses said unto the people, Fear not. So in other words, don't go to that extreme point of fear where you're afraid of God, for God is come to prove you, and that his fear may be before your faces, that ye sin not. And the people stood afar off, and Moses drew near unto the thick darkness where God was. Note the actions of those who realized they were in the presence of God. They fall down. Even Jesus, when they realized who Jesus is, the demons, when they got put in the presence of Jesus, what do? They fell down. They worshiped. They reverenced him. A.W. Tozer said this in one of his writings. In the old days, people of faith were said to walk in the fear of God and to serve the Lord with fear. Wherever God appeared to people in Bible times, the results were an overwhelming sense of terror and dismay, a wrenching sensation of sinfulness and guilt. The self-assurance of modern Christianity, the shocking disrespect shown for the person of God, are evidence of the deep blindness of the heart. So true. Isaiah chapter number 6, when he got in the presence of God, what happened? He fell down. Woe is me. I am a sinful man. My tongue is unclean. I am undone. That's the fear of God along those lines. Understanding that God is just, that God is holy, and that God is mighty. And so we see the beginning of fear. The beginning of fear can be taught. The blessings of fear. The blessings of fear. When we begin to fear God, we begin to experience growth. Listen to a couple verses. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. We grow when we begin to fear the Lord. You and I can begin to grow in knowledge and understand the things of the Lord and understand his word better. The fear of the Lord is also the beginning of wisdom. Wisdom is the application of knowledge to a circumstance, right? Being able to take what you know and understand it and being able to choose the right path with that. That's wisdom. And so when you fear the Lord, it helps you down that path of wisdom and experience the growth with that. And then listen to this verse, Psalm 25:14. The secret of the Lord is with them that fear him, and he will show them his covenant. He will come and have that personal relationship with you. He'll whisper in your ear. He'll tell you little secrets. He may even whisper how much he loves you. The fear of the Lord, the secret of the Lord is with them that fear him. And so fear helps us to mature and to grow along those lines and also to experience God's grace. A.W. Tozer said this as well. No one can know the true grace of God who has not first known the fear of God. You can't know the grace of God. until you know the fear of God. Of course, John Newton, there, that captain of the slave ship who lived wickedly before giving his life to God, and he wrote the great hymn, Amazing Grace. Before he died, he wrote a short statement to some friends that could sum up his life. He said this: "My memory's nearly gone, but I remember two things, that I am a great sinner and that Christ is a great Savior." He understood that. And remember this, I think it's the second verse of the song, "'Twas grace that taught my heart to what? To fear. And grace my fears relieved." He understood. He understood that, again, the fear of God brings blessings in our life. As we approach the Father with a proper respect and fear, we begin to learn about Him, His characteristics, His desire for Him to grant and to place His grace upon our lives. By humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life. So there's great blessings that come with fearing the Lord as we learn this fear of the Lord. And so we've seen a lacking of the fear, those that have a lacking. We've seen a learning of the fear of the Lord with that. But I want us to close tonight with just a quick thought here about the fear of the Lord that brings a loving. As a person chooses to fear, knowledge begins to change the relationship, get this, from one of being afraid to one of reverence. So as you and I get to know God better, those that are unsaved, they ought to fear the judgment of God. They ought to be afraid. What does the Bible say? It's a terror to fall into the hands of a living God. Right? It's terrifying. God, it talks about God being terrible. Well, not in a bad sense, but it being awesome, being mighty, right? Along those lines. And He's a warrior, and you don't want to come up against Him, right? On the wrong side. But once you get to know Him, that mighty warrior of our God, He's a God of love. And there's nothing that we have to be afraid about. We just need to reverence Him and respect Him for who He is. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear, because fear hath torment. He that feareth is not made perfect in love. So as we get to know our love, then the element of fear changes from one of, oh no, I'm afraid that God's going to always smack me around and He's angry at me and He's going to judge my sin, such as the children there of Jacob, to one, all right, I understand that God is just and that God is holy and that God is mighty, but I also know He loves me. And I'm going to respect those things, and I'm going to reverence those things. But I get to have a relationship with Him because He loves me. And perfect love casteth out that kind of fear. One person said, the fear of God causes His children to run to Him and His enemies to run away from Him. Did you catch that? The fear of God causes His children to run to Him, while the enemies run away from Him. That's a great little statement of thought. Once we fear God, we will respect Him and reverence Him, desiring to have a close relationship with Him. We will approach Him, giving Him the honor and respect that He is due. And we will approach Him with the right heart attitude. I know I haven't given you an expositional message on Genesis 42, but we do see a contrast. Joseph says, I fear God. And I believe he did. His brothers on 2 occasions said, I am afraid of God, that He's judging me, judging us for our sin. We need to move from not having a lack of the fear of God. We need to learn the fear of the God. And as we learn the fear of God, we need to delight and let that love that God has for us as his children to change that fear from being afraid and running from him to being reverential, respectful, and running to him. And what a great truth for us to remember tonight.